Ladies and gentlemen, if you please take your seats, we're about to start the program.
We probably like the better.
Thank you. I'm sincerely aware. And we have to be the same political persuasion. That makes it better. Thank you, Captain.
I want to thank everyone for coming this morning, and we'll start the program with a presentation of the colors by the Hueneme High School Junior ROTC. Present the colors. Master Chief Jim Daniels will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in saluting our flag of our great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
The Boys and Girls Club members from Port Hueneme and Oxnard will now sing the national anthem. Lieutenant Colonel Clay Cowgill, U.S. Air Force, retired, commander of VFW Post 3935, will give us an invocation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful day in our city of Port Hueneme. Please join me in prayer. Almighty God, we stand here today to pay tribute to brave men and women, living and dead, who have served their country in the armed forces. accept our thanksgiving for their sacrifices and the sacrifices of their families, which have purchased for us a free land. Cause us never to take for granted their devotion to liberty. Let our spirits be proud of them. Let our hearts be compassionate. Let our minds be clear and determined in giving them the honor and the respect they deserve. Enkindle within us a flame of selflessness, unwavering devotion to duty, that we may never be found wanting in those qualities of spirit and mind which are able to preserve our homes, our communities, and the peace of our nation. Keep our memories alive with gratitude, and our gratitude alive with faithfulness to the principles which made our nation great. Grant, we pray, joy and fulfillment to those living, and for those who are at rest, please grant your peace. Amen.
Retire the colors. Please be seated. Want to quickly introduce a number of VIPs and guests. We'll not introduce the folks who are part of the program. We'll get them individually. They're not in order of seniority or precedence. It's the order they happen to come in and sign in. From the Junior ROTC unit, Pablito Quiachon. The commanding officer of the Ben Morrell Sea Cadet Battalion, Ramon Casas. Orvine Carpenter, that's you, Orvine. Bill Stewart, we're going to get him later. Jim Hensley.
Right here, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you, Jim. Tony Volante. They got your rank wrong on this thing, Tony. Or did you forget when you came in? Sylvia Munoz Snop, City Council. John Sharkey, City Council. And Jess Herrera from Oxnard Harbor District. And if we missed anybody, I apologize, but that gives you good reason to be here next year and let us know you're coming so we can properly recognize you. We'll now continue with the program. The Mayor of the City of Port Hueneme, Tom Figg, give a few welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Captain Quinn. Welcome. I'm honored to be here with you to celebrate this great day. Before we get into the program, there are a couple of acknowledgments that I want to make. First and foremost are the volunteers and the city staff, volunteers of the Historical Museum of Port Hueneme, who really are the driving force behind this celebration. This is the second effort of that, and we're so pleased that they would sponsor this, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. Yeah, please give them a round of applause. Next, I want to celebrate our future leaders, the Sea Cadets, the Junior ROTC. They make us all proud. They're all part of our community, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But thank you so much for making this a special occasion as well. So today's program is not just about veterans today. It's about past, present, and future. I had the privilege earlier this year to speak to the Retired Reserve Officers Association of the West Coast here at the Bard Mansion. And I did a little homework in advance of speaking to that group, and I was quite surprised. I guess I shouldn't be, but I was pleased with some of the statistics I found. I learned that when we're talking about past and present, that some 28% of our population in the city of Port Hueneme is recognized as veterans. That's compared to 12% nationwide. So we have quite a contingent of retired and active military in our community. And you might ask, why is that significant? Because we're not here just to celebrate military service, we're here to celebrate community as well. And what I found, compared to the population at large, our veterans, both past and present, have higher education levels, have higher degrees of employment, and have generally higher incomes than the population at large. So that just simply indicates how, veterans celebrating their service is one thing, but let's don't forget about their value and contribution to the community. So then we get into the future. And I already talked a little bit about how the Sea Cadets and the ROTC program contributes to our community. These programs, much like the veterans that are here today, excel in all their educational pursuits. They excel in their academics in terms of their GPA. They excel in terms of being good students in their schools. They have the lowest dropout rate of any of the other students that are not in those programs. So again, we're lucky to have these programs in our community, and I certainly urge you to support those efforts, because I can tell you firsthand, having had a son gone through the ROTC program, it made a world of difference. These programs really are based or founded on the principles of honor, respect, good citizenship. And it doesn't matter what career path that they pursue, because these programs aren't about recruiting for the military. They're about giving our youth a foundation, a moral compass. And again, I can tell you firsthand how valuable they are. So we deserve to give them their support. Now, I want to bridge the past and the present. I was hoping to see this individual here today. We all have stories about veterans in our families and our network of friends that we celebrate. Well, I have one too. His name is Chief Stephen Hayes. Chief Stephen Hayes is the lead instructor at the Junior ROTC program. He also happens to be honored as being one of the few Seabees to receive the Shields Medal, which is to honor, it's a top honor for the Seabees across the nation. His name is in a plaque at the museum, the Seabee Museum, and if you haven't seen it, I suggest you search it out. But Mr. Hayes, or Chief Hayes, is an individual I have such great regard and respect for. He's a veteran, and now he's teaching our children to acquire the very principles I mentioned: respect, citizenship, leadership. And so I want to pay tribute to him. I was hoping he'd be here, but I'm hoping that our CB representatives will take that back to their classroom next week, and please let him know that I acknowledged his contribution. So at this point, I'd like to close by simply saying that by your attendance here, it shows that we have a common set of values. That's because we're Americans, we respect our flag, we're proud, and we're indebted to our veterans. And so I thank you very much for exhibiting that appreciation by your presence today. And in closing, God bless America. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to our MC, Captain Quinn. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for hosting this. And we now have the privilege of introducing Congresswoman Julia Brownlee, represents us in Congress for District 26.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Captain, for the introduction. And I also would like to thank Mayor Figg and the City of Port Hueneme for hosting us all here on this bright and beautiful morning. I also want to thank, and really can't thank enough, Larry Downing for his hard work in putting together this great event, and really for his fierce, and I mean fierce, advocacy of our community's veterans, not only today on Veterans Day, but every day throughout the year. Today we come together as a community and as a nation to honor and celebrate our veterans, and as the mayor said, past, present, and future. Even more so, we come together to say thank you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your sacrifice. You swore to support and defend our nation and our Constitution. Many of you left behind loved ones to protect your fellow Americans and sometimes very distant lands. We will never forget nor take for granted what you gave up for our security and for our freedom. We also remember today the service members who have given what President Lincoln called the last full measure of devotion. Recently, Ventura County lost 2 service members who shared that devotion to our great nation. Staff Sergeant Robert Cox was killed in the military plane crash in Mississippi this summer that took the lives of 16 members of our armed forces. And last Saturday, Sergeant First Class Stephen Cribben died of wounds sustained while he was serving in Afghanistan. They both bravely served our nation with honor and distinction, and our Ventura County community mourns this horrible loss. Let us all keep their loved ones in our thoughts and prayers, and please know that we are here for you, and Ventura County's arms are wrapped around you. It is important to also recognize the families of our service members and veterans who we know serve right alongside our men and women in uniform. We express our deepest gratitude to all of you here today. Finally, I want to acknowledge a very special guest, Faye Violino, who is here with us today. Her late husband, Ignacio, was one of the 250,000 Filipinos who valiantly fought for America's armed forces in World War II. Recently, Ignacio and this community of veterans were honored at a Congressional Gold Medal ceremony in our nation's capital. Ignacio's story and the stories of the nearly 45,000 veterans who call Ventura County home capture the rich military legacy of our community. This legacy continues today with our service members stationed at Naval Base Ventura County, including Captain Mike Somm and his Seabees. The Seabees are builders, and they are also fighters. Fighters and builders defined by selfless service and a dedication to creating something bigger than themselves that would outlast themselves. This service and sacrifice is what we thank our veterans for today. And as a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, my colleagues and I are dedicated to repaying the legacy of service with action. It is only right that our nation show our gratitude by making sure that our veterans are receiving the care and benefits they have earned and deserved. I will pass along to you that recently Congress passed a bipartisan bill to authorize 28 new VA clinics across the nation, including a new clinic right here in Ventura County, so that more veterans can get their care much closer to home. Additionally, in an effort to ensure our veterans receive the benefits that will help them lead fulfilling lives as civilians, I'm proud to say that Democrats and Republicans came together earlier this year and passed legislation that enhances and expands the GI Bill to better enable current and future veterans to pursue a higher education after their service to our nation. While it may seem like all you hear from Washington is political fighting, there remains a strong bipartisan commitment to our veterans. This is because we all share a belief that we must honor and we must recognize our veterans, that this is greater than the differences that may divide us. Today and every day, we thank our veterans for their service and their sacrifice and for our freedoms and rights that we often take for granted. So in closing, may I say God bless our veterans, God bless their families and loved ones, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Brownlee. It's now my pleasure to introduce Assemblywoman Jackie Irwin, representing us in the 44th District.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for, can you hear me? All right. Thank you for inviting me to this incredible celebration, and it's so wonderful to see the celebrations that are going on throughout our entire county. This is the second time that I've been here this week because we also had a Take Your Vet to School Day, and that program is spreading throughout the entire county, and these young people here reminded me of that. I think it's so important that the young people also understand the sacrifices that our vets have made. So at each of the schools, there were 3 or 4 vets that told their stories, and the kids were really quite enthralled with them, and it is just so important to make sure that we never forget what our veterans have done for us. Veterans Day celebrates and honors the service and sacrifice and enduring achievements of nearly 22 million Americans who served our nation in uniform, at home and abroad, both during times of war and peace. Not only should we honor those service members, past and present, but as our Congresswoman said, we need to make sure to honor the family members who supported them while they were called out to defend our nation's freedoms. As your state legislator, I would like to take a moment to tell you that there is good work being done in Sacramento to ensure our veterans receive the care and benefits that they deserve. We are tackling issues like ending veteran homelessness, putting veteran resource centers on every single college campus, and making sure that there are funds in our budget to support our veteran service officers and Joint Claims Task Force so that veterans get help with the benefits that they have earned. Good things are happening and progress is being made, yet as all of you know, there is much work still to be done. And I pledge that as your assembly member, I will continue to do all that I can do. Today, while we celebrate all those who have served and sacrificed for our nation, I challenge all of you to ask yourselves, what more can I do to benefit and be mindful of our common purpose, which is to honor and serve those who have given so much to protect us, our country, and our way of life. To all the veterans in attendance today, I would like to raise my voice with the rest of our community and say, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Jackie. Now would like to introduce Harbor District Commissioner Jess Ramirez.
I asked as to why they had invited me to speak at this event today. And they keep telling me, well, you're a longshoreman. You got to tell the story of how you wind up here from wherever you're from. So there it goes, guys. this is
You forgot you're a veteran, Jess.
well, yeah, right. Well, I'm a Vietnam veteran, but that's going to come later. So my story is a happy story, okay? So you can put your handkerchiefs away. I'm not going to make you cry, all right? It's with all the stuff that's going on in our country. This is a good story that I'm in, and so it started in Texas, in Juarez, when I was born. Okay, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I'm going to condense it. I come from a background where my parents had lost 2 or 3 kids of starvation, malnutrition in Mexico. So when we hit Juarez, I was born sort of dead. They call it dehydrated now, but my mother didn't know that. So my sister, who was 15 years old, went down to the city, begged for a doctor, found a doctor, brought it to the little hut that my parents lived, and gave me and drops of water. So because of that, I always told the story to my kids. You know, they got tired of it, about how water had saved me. And so I wanted to write a book about gotitas de agua, little drops of water, how that enabled me to be here today. And so my daughter, who's here, picked up the lead. She wrote a book called Eat Less Water. It's a little commercial, guys. It's Eat Less Water, and you want to see the story about how I survived, it's in her book. Okay, so please look for it. But anyway, so I was 10 years old, went to the movies in El Paso, and I saw this great movie called GI Blues with Elvis Presley, all right? And I'm fascinated with what he's doing in Germany. So once I left the movies, I knew that I was going to join the Army at 10 years old. That was part of my physique already. I knew I wanted to join the Army, and I wanted to go to Europe. I wanted to do what Elvis Presley did over there. I mean, I loved it, okay? So, needless to say, we spent about 10 years migrating from El Paso to all the fields in California, picking up the different crops and all that. And in 1958, we settled here in Oxnard. And the reason being is that they needed a couple of businessmen, and I found this later, that one of the gentlemen that had lived in El Paso, they were looking for stonemasons. So one of them, Mr. Loya, went to El Paso and found my father, who was a great stonemason. And yesterday I took my daughter to Colonia and showed her some of the fences that my father had built. I mean, he did beautiful work. So he brought my father back to Oxnard. He had been in Santa Paula as a bracero in 1950, so he kind of liked the lifestyle that California has to offer, you know, the life of the rich and famous. So we settled here in Oxnard. He started doing his work out of stonemasons, and they got some beautiful stuff that's done. And so that's how we wind up here. So I went to high school. And I knew that at some point I needed to join the Army. So before I got drafted, I joined. I said I don't want to be drafted because I wanted to go to Europe. So at that time, they give you an assignment or a school. So I took Europe unassigned because I figured I would go to Europe, and every 3 months I go to different parts of the European theater, and I'll have a good time. So after basic, I went to Alabama helicopter school. Huey, and if you're in the military, you understand what the Huey is a symbol of the Vietnam War. So I was in school. There was 43 of us in that class, and when we finished, 3 months later, everyone in my classmates went to the 1st Cavalry Division, medevac in Vietnam. Okay, and they kept telling me, "You're gonna go with us?" I said, "No, I can't go with you, man. I signed up. I'm an RA. They got to send me to Europe." Well, needless to say, they sent me to Virginia. For a month, they didn't know why I was there. Finally, they realized that I was there for more school, so I went to the CH-47 Chinook School, another helicopter school. I'm done with that, and finally they sent me to Germany. Finally, I went to Germany. So I'm in Munich, Germany. I don't like beer, and that's my favorite country. You know, I don't drink beer. You know, I was a nice kid. So I'm not a drinker. I didn't have quite of the taste, but later on I did though. So I'm watching the Bob Hope show during Christmas, and I'm there sitting in a nice barrack, and I'm feeling guilty. you know, I should be in Vietnam. You know, I mean, I should be in Vietnam. I shouldn't be here. I mean, I'm feeling guilty. So a little later on, they called us. They needed of all things, they needed longshoremen in Vietnam. Okay, no one had ever heard that the Army even had longshoremen. So thousands of us were pulled out of Europe after I was there for 6 months. Come back to Virginia, Fort Eustis, got trained as a longshoreman, put us on C-30, C-130s, and here, there we go, flying to Vietnam, 56 hours flying time. We had our combat gear, our rifles, and everything else ready to go. They didn't tell us where exactly we were going to go, but we knew we were going to go to Vietnam, but they didn't tell us until we landed. So we landed in Cam Bay, right? Cam Bay, if you know about Vietnam, it's a pretty safe place to be, all right? Some of my closest friends are all Vietnam vets, and they all got Purple Hearts, they all got Silver Stars, they all got wounded, they were in the jungles, and they make fun of me because it's just, you weren't in the real war. I mean, you know, but I think that unloading ships for the military effort, for the war effort, that's just as important as being out there in the front line, because without us, they don't have no vehicles, they don't have anything. So anyway, so that's my story. So I'm discharging all this cargo, and I'm seeing that it's all from Port Hueneme. So the reason that I'm here today is because the war worked for me. Because here, after I get out, I come to the dispatch hall, and I'm telling my story, and they put me to work right away, loading the same ships that I used to be unloaded in Vietnam. So for the last 50 years, I've been hanging out there down the street in this beautiful port, which I call paradise, because that port has given me all the things that I needed to send my 4 beautiful daughters to the best schools money can buy in this country, all right? Coming from that background that I came from, and fulfilling what I have done with my kids, because that's my legacy. My kids are my legacy. So again, my story is a good story. And I thank the Lord that saved me. I know that 52,000 people didn't make it back, but I'm one of them that did. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
I guess just proves to us that not all those folks in uniform are killers. A lot of folks get the bad idea. Another veteran is up next, representing Kelly Long from the County 3rd District, Captain Paul Grosco.
Thank you, Bob. Supervisor Kelly Long sends her regrets. She was not able to be here today as much as she wanted to, but I just wanted to pass along her regards and also her thanks to the city of Port Hueneme and to Mayor Fig. And I also have a resolution signed by the Board of Supervisors that the Mayor, I'll leave this for you here. And she certainly appreciates all that is done for and by veterans here in Port Hueneme and Ventura County. So this Veterans Day, as every Veterans Day, I wear my dad's dog tags. He was a World War II veteran. His dad was, my grandfather was a World War I veteran. So growing up, they were my role models, my heroes, for not only myself, but also my generation. So I think it is for us now to be the role models for the rising generation, those wonderful young kids in the back. It is now our responsibility to pay that forward. So again, thank you from Supervisor Kelly Long, and I appreciate you all being here today.
Thanks, Paul. The keynote speaker for us today is the Commodore from Naval Construction Group 1, Captain Mike Song.
All right. Hey, so thank you very much for this, the opportunity to speak here today. But I will say that if you had to really talk about a keynote speaker, Jess, I think you got it. That was an awesome story. So absolutely fantastic. So to the city, to the Historical Society, lots of folks put this on today. Oxnard Harbor District, really thank you for this opportunity for all of us to get together. A couple things I'd like to say first off. So first I want to thank Larry also. Talk about tenacity, and I think that's absolutely right, it's tenacity. It was over a year ago that Larry said, hey, next year at Veterans Day, you need to come here and you need to be the speaker. So probably about once a month, I got an email from Larry saying, hey, by the way, you're going to be the speaker. So so here I am. So I made it. Thanks very much.
Thank you,
Hoorah. So hey, I want to point out to the Sea Cadets and that entire organization, you know, and the JROTC, the idea of service, and especially service at such a young age, and volunteering to do that, and recognizing what that service brings to our country is very, very valuable. And you look very sharp today. Very proud of what you are and what you represent. So thanks for doing what you do. All right, so of course I feel honored to be up here, Mayor. You know, I think anytime I stand near Captain Bob Quinn and Master Chief Daniels, Commander Stewart over here, I'm always humbled and honored. It's the legacy of these great folks that have gone before. So again, thank you, Congresswoman Brownlee. Appreciate you being here. Representative Assemblywoman Jackie Irwin, thank you. So it's great to have you here. So. Hey, that national anthem. How about that national anthem? That was absolutely awesome. That was absolutely awesome. So thank you very much. You do a great honor to all of us. And the color guard, where's the color guard back there somewhere? They've left? All right. Hey, they look great too. So that was great stuff. All right. So let's do a little inventory today. Coast Guard. How many people from the Coast Guard here? Sir, please stand up. All right. All right, that's it. One representative. All right. How about the Army?
Yes, sir.
Hoorah! Or should I say ooh-ah? All right, thank you very much. Air Force. Oh. All right. Marine Corps. Hoorah! And of course, the Navy. All right. All right, great stuff. Hey, so how about family members? Any family members of anybody's service? I'm talking aunts, uncles, anything. Yeah, here, stand up, please. All right. So I point that out because I think, as we've already covered, is that we don't do this stuff. We don't succeed. We can't go forward and do what we do if it's not for the family members that stand behind us. It's because if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, right? We've said that plenty of times before. And if you're not there supporting what we do, we can't in good conscience go forward. So thank you for that, and thank you for everything that you've done. For all those service members that stood up, thanks for your service over the years, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. All right. So it's truly an honor to have this opportunity to speak to you all on behalf of our vets. So on behalf of our vets, I wrestled with that a little bit, because on behalf of implies that I'm part of a group that I'm not quite sure I was part of. See, I've always looked at the term veteran as a term of distinction. And those are things, the things that we learn from youth that we carry forward into adulthood. And so I hadn't really thought about that until I was asked to come do this. So, in the early 70s, I remember I had an Uncle Dick who spent over a year in Vietnam as a Huey pilot. Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart. That's a vet. I remember those older gents from World War I, World War II, Korea, with their VFW uniforms on, marching in parades. we looked at them with a sense of awe. Those were vets, folks that answered our nation's call, some voluntarily, some not. Either way, they went into harm's way in conflicts against enemies and faced the ugliest of human conflict in conditions that many of us could never imagine. These ladies, and fewer of them then than there are today, and gentlemen, those are vets. So as I've gotten older, I recognize that sense of awe that I had for those vets, those distinguished men and women, was taught to me by my father. A true patriot who held in the highest regard service to one's country and the courage to answer the call. Probably the reason I stand here today, 26 years after I'd joined the military. Funny thing is, I never considered him a vet until probably just a few years ago. A submarine veteran, he himself served on diesel boats in the late 50s and early 60s. Any sub-vets here today? Just out of curiosity? I'll tell you, my hats are off to them. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I learned that my father was a veteran. So and it dawned on me. So my previous duty station before coming here was in Hawaii. I know it's rough, the things we do for our country, right? But Dad came to visit, and if you've ever been to Hawaii and you've been to Oahu and the Pearl Harbor and the Arizona Memorial, there's a submarine there, right, called the Bowfin. And it's a diesel boat and somewhat of the same class of submarine that my father had served on. And so while we were there, we were going to go visit the Arizona, and part of this trip was going to go look at the submarine. Like, hey, this is good for Dad. And he was on subs, and he'd always talked about that. Active in the sub-vets of America. So we go on this submarine, or as we walk in, we're walking by the booth, and and if you've been there, or any things that you go to like this, there's this audio thing that you could do. And so they offer it to my father, and he looks at them like they're crazy. Like, I don't need that thing. A couple expletives, but I'll leave those out. But no, he didn't need that. And so here was this man in his mid-70s. It'd been years, decades, since he's been on this thing. And so, okay. But I take the brochure, and we're going to go walking through. I've got my two boys with me, his grandsons. We go on that submarine. We go on that submarine, and we're walking down the stairs, and he starts talking. And he's talking as if he got off that submarine yesterday. And he's pointing out things on that submarine that's not in the brochure. No one else is talking about. But he says, "Oh, this is what that's for. And you do this to do that, and this, and there's this many batteries in that, and each of those batteries weighs this much, and there's this many torpedoes on this, and this is what." And he is going on and on. And I started asking him questions. I said, "Well, because I've got the cheat sheet." And I started asking him questions. I said, "Hey, Dad, what about this? How many of those batteries are there?" And like that. He's clicking it off. And I'll tell you, he knew that submarine front to back. He was so knowledgeable and could tell stories about what it meant to be on that submarine and what it meant to be when there's a full food store or when there wasn't a full food store. He knew when where the water was and he could tell you the smells of what it was like to be on that submarine. And it was so intriguing, it was so compelling that the people who had taken those audio cassettes to listen walking through that thing, they took them off to listen to my father talk about what it was like to be on that submarine. Yeah. So it dawns on me, that's a vet, right? A Cold War vet that kept the fight on even when the bullets weren't flying. But if any of you have ever read the book Blind Man's Bluff, I think that you could probably say that we were at war. It was just not a shooting war. And you'd probably look at that differently. He went to work every day to get a little bit better, to lean a little bit more forward, to make sure that they were ready to conduct their mission and go to war and in harm's way when necessary. And I'll tell you, that's the true sense of our military strength, is to go in every day to be a little bit better, to prepare for the what if. It may never come. It may be here tomorrow. It may never come in another 10, 15, 20 years. But we got to be ready all the time. That's what a veteran is. So I mentioned earlier that I wrestled with whether or not I'm a vet, because being a vet, especially on Veterans Day, means I'm part of an exclusive club that is getting smaller by the day. I'm never welcome in any exclusive clubs, so should I be so bold to say that I'm part of this one? So as I reflected on what to say today, I decided that I'd sneak in and hope nobody noticed. Of course, Bob and Master Chief Daniels will probably throw me out later, but possession is 9/10 of the law, and I've got the mic. All right. So, but then I realized it wasn't Mike Somm that got invited here to speak today. It was the Commodore of Naval Construction Group 1, a position in which I have the honor to serve and of which I'm the caretaker, the highlight of my military career. Also, like it or not, 26 years of service has me at the twilight of my military career, where I'm always one haircut away of being a gray, distinguished old fella. Or maybe just a gray-haired fella. But either way, it's really my position, backed up with some experience, that provides me a unique vantage point to talk to you today on behalf of our vets. So what's this vantage point? First, I work with some of the best people on the planet. Depending on the stats you look at, the percentage of the population that serves today ranges from 0.4% to about 1%. I'll go with the 1%. 0.4 is a little bit depressing. But these folks voluntarily raised their hand and swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies while we are at war. Jess, it reminds me of your comment, hey, I'm a little bit guilty. I shouldn't be in Germany. I need to go. Right? That's what these folks have done. Voluntarily raised their hand to go into harm's way. I've had the tremendous honor of leading this millennial generation that we talk so much about, and usually it's not in a very good manner, but I've had the opportunity to lead these folks in combat, in war. They built combat outposts in Afghanistan in what the Army called the heart of darkness, the birthplace of the Taliban. Shot at, rocketed, mortared, didn't matter, mission complete. The stories of this generation, with time behind them, sound a lot like those for those who have gone before us and added the tremendous legacy of our fighting force. And now, as our peer competitors in China and Russia are establishing their place in the world, we find ourselves redefining where we fit in the scheme of things. Preparing for a conflict that'll look nothing like what we've encountered in Southwest Asia, but instead going back to what the Seabees' roots are in World War II in the Pacific, albeit with about 3% of the Seabees we had then. So I want you, just as a side note, there were 320,000 Seabees in World War II. There are 326,000 people in the Navy today. Food for thought. All right, yeah. So the second reason that I have a unique vantage point here is that this position offers me the opportunity, if not demands, that I reflect on and celebrate the last 75 years of our specialty as the Navy, the U.S. Navy Seabees. As we celebrate our 75th birthday this year, I've gotten to know people like Master Chief Daniels and Bob Quinn and many, many others like them. World War II, Korea, Vietnam. If you consider the enormity of their tasks, the environment in which they needed to complete them, I have three thoughts. One, we should thank God there are people who stand up to go carry out our nation's bidding. Two, that we stand on the shoulders today of giants, and that their ability to get her done, that's my time in Mississippi coming out there. It shows us and allows us the opportunity to believe in that we can do today. And three, the humility in which they talk about what they've done is almost comical. Again, the sacrifices they've made, the problems they've solved, and the conditions under which they solved them are worthy of our utmost respect and admiration, but they'll tell you those stories as if they were digging post holes in their backyard. So for our Vietnam vets in the crowd, can you guys please stand? You know, our nation was in an interesting spot when you all served, and today, while we're on active duty, we get the gratitude of the population. You didn't get that when you came home, and so I would like to just say, I don't think we do it enough, but publicly say thank you for what you've done again, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and you are those giants. So thank you for your service. Finally, the third thing that the vantage point I get is I get to meet and interact with a community that truly and deeply cares about the military. Sure, us being here is great for the economy, but the relationship we have with the people of this community goes well beyond the dollar. You know, so in prepping for this today, I came across a couple of articles that bemoan the fact that the celebrations that we have today don't look like what they used to. Fewer parades, smaller ceremony, fewer people coming out, or that the phrase "thanks for your service" is more a catchphrase and something that's required, that when people see people in uniform, that's really void of meaning. So as I reflected on that statement a little bit, it made me realize how lucky we are here in Port Hueneme to live in a community that generally cares about its military. I've said it before, but the 75 years Seabees have lived, trained, and deployed to war to conduct humanitarian service and disaster relief missions, or just further the reach of our nation, have all happened from this base and from this community. We could not do that without having comfort that our families were cared for and accepted as part of this community. When our nation says California doesn't support the military, you all are a shining example of why they're wrong and why that it is to the contrary. So while we're here today to honor our vets, the vets of our nation, I'd like to say thank you all for your support. All right, so I've talked long enough, and I'm going to wrap it up here before Bob and Master Chief actually do throw me out of this club. I'm truly humbled to come and speak again on behalf of our vets. But I'll close with this. While the strength of our nation is represented by our military, the depth of that strength lies in the communities that support the military and to honor those who have served so nobly and sacrificed so much. So while you honor us today, we thank you, because you ultimately will make us ready. You are the foundation of when this nation needs a larger military again. It's going to be because of folks like you that stand up and band together across this country that makes the service a requirement. We have 1% of our nation serves today only because we need 1% of that nation to serve. But it's the folks that sit out here today that when that requirement happens and it has to go up, that we're ready. And we're ready because we have that depth of commitment and support from you all. So, thank you for attending today. God bless you, your families. God bless all the troops across all the services, and God bless America.
I'm not sure if Larry had any devious purpose in having us close with a song, but in honor of Mike Somm, I guess, we're going to have Bill Stewart lead the CB song. Please, all of you who know it, and I know there's a whole bunch of them here, join in. I'm not sure he needs any help, but let's give it to him anyway. Bill Stewart.
Seabees of the Navy, we can build and we can fight. We'll pave the way to victory and guard it day and night. And we promise to remember the 7th of December with the Seabees of the Navy, bees of the 7th Sea.
To those of us who spent our lives as Seabees, that's an important song. It still is a crappy tune. We have a closing prayer. Travers, I thought I saw you coming in. To give us a closing prayer, we have Henry Travers Bard Newton, the great-grandson of Thomas Bard. Thomas Bard was a veteran. I'm not sure about Travers. He's probably smarter than that.
Good morning. My mother, Joanna Bard Newton, sends her greetings to you. She was born in Oxnard in 1917 when her father, Richard Bard, known as the father of Hueneme Harbor, was in France fighting Germany. And my mother gave birth to her first child when my dad was in Germany fighting the Nazis in the Battle of the Bulge, and some of you may have heard of the Remagen Bridge conflict. So we spoke about this prayer this morning, and she reminded me that her father, Richard Bard, always had a photo of President Lincoln in a special place in his office that he inherited from his father, Thomas Bard. And my mother has a little diary of Thomas, who was a scout in the Civil War, and he was pretty good on a horse, and he knew how to operate telegraph, and he's out riding near Gettysburg, and it says, "I see the rebels massing," and he could climb up a telegraph pole and tap into it and send a message. And his brother Cephas was in the terrible Battle of Antietam, and he saw such terrible wounds that he went to Jefferson Medical College after that. His dissertation was on the treatment of gunshot wounds. So, and just one little point at the link between President Lincoln and Port Hueneme is that Thomas Bard was sent here by Thomas Scott, who was in Lincoln's cabinet in charge of railroad transportation in December 1864. And so I sometimes wonder if this harbor would ever be here if it wasn't for Lincoln and Mr. Scott. So this is from President Lincoln's second inaugural address, 1865, just before he was assassinated, just a short portion of it. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a particular and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Travers. And we want to thank all of you for coming. I'm not sure who in the city is going to take credit for the beautiful weather, but in North Oxnard, I can tell you, when I jumped in the car to come over here, I threw a coat in because it was cold. So, thank you again for helping us recognize Veterans Day and recognize those veterans here in our community. And to Larry, who snags every one of us who can't run faster than he does. He and all the rest of the volunteers did a great job, and my thanks to them. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the day.